Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining in. I'm Daniel Guimont. I've done Devlin Peck's Bootcamp. I went through the whole process, had an amazing time, and I have with myself Amira, who herself has gone through the bootcamp at the same time as me. She created a phenomenal flagship project, and what I want to do today is to talk about her process through the bootcamp, her experience, what it's given her, and any tools or tricks for people that are thinking of joining the bootcamp or people that are thinking of joining the instructional design field. Maybe you're migrating from a teacher position and you want to go into a business, or you want to maybe freelance and do your own thing. So we're just two passionate people talking about what we love. So let's get it started. Amira, if you, I'd love to hear maybe your first steps about the boot camp experience, where you were thinking about it, you were looking at it, what brought it about? Was it through YouTube? Was it through other social media?
So the boot camp shopping experience, of course. So no, I actually made the decision to transition into instructional design and realized I was missing all sorts of tools from my tool belt. And I needed something relatively quick and intense that was going to give me those tools. So I started the shopping spree and looked at a variety of different programs, boot camps, things like this. And I actually almost went with a different boot camp program. And then somebody posted one of Devlin's videos. And I looked at that and I started looking into his boot camp programs. And I realized that they had the Bootcamp Pros, which was such a huge selling point, is getting feedback. Because for me, I thrive off of feedback. If you're not telling me what I'm doing wrong, how am I supposed to fix it, right? So that was such a huge selling point for me. And it seemed more challenging, which for a lot of people, I guess, would probably be an anti-selling point. But for me, I really enjoy pushing myself. And it was a program that marketed itself as you get out of it what you put into it. And that was really big for me because I didn't just want like a little gold star on a piece of paper that says, oh, you know how to do the things. I wanted to leave actually having the tools. So I started watching more of his videos and decided that was going to be the boot camp for me.
That's amazing. There's a lot of parallels with your experience and mine.
Really?
Same thing. For me, the major selling point was the Bootcamp Pros. So for those that are not aware, you're tossed into this. I guess one way of looking at it is an online course. So you purchase this service and you have access to a bunch of videos, follow along videos of this is how you learn articulate storyline. So that would be one of the first steps into it. Then you build your own project, which is a big deal. Then you build your own website where you're going to showcase, so a portfolio website, which that also is a big, big deal about the bootcamp. But it's so overwhelming, this whole process. Personally, I went in thinking, okay, this is going to take me a handful of months, and it
Oh,
can for some, but me, it took a full year. Now, understand that I was working full time and I dedicated a minimum of an hour a day for it. Now, for some, that's not enough, but that was all I could do. Sometimes I could squeeze in a little bit more, which was great, but it, it, it's good to know the reality when you're going in, the expectations of the time that it can take, the amount of work that you could put in. And to your point, having coaches, for a lack of a better term, that can really pinpoint and give you crucial details on how to better yourself was extremely valuable for me. What was some of the tips that you received from your pro that maybe got you unstuck, or just reignited a bit of flame into your passion?
that's what, well, for me, I was going to say the pros were great in guiding a lot of my process. And trying to think of tactful way to put this. I never had just like beat you over the head, like, oh, all of this needs changing. It was a process that was relatively intuitive for me, but they would give me ways to polish things. That was so, so helpful. And I'm going to vaguely bounce off of this as well. The pros were super helpful. Something that I discovered so many people in the boot camp weren't taking advantage of that really, really helped is the meetings. Do you hit any of the meetings, the Wednesday meetings or anything, and the storyline meetings Thursdays? I learned so much from watching the boot camps help boot camp pros help other people through their problems. So I didn't necessarily have any major problems that were coming up in mine because I was going to meetings, submitting my work for them to help there, or watching other people get through the issues. So by the time that I was building, designing, doing things, I had already seen a pro work one-on-one with someone else on that same issue. And that was such a great opportunity to ask questions, see things live, help others. And anyone who's done any sort of, teaching, that one of the best ways to learn is to make sure that you could teach someone else the same thing. So they always throw it out to you. Hey, does anyone know how to solve this? And you can take a stab at helping someone else or watch someone else solve that problem. So for me, having the pro feedback to polish was great, but almost getting to problems before you had them through those meetings was just key.
Getting to the problems before you had them. That's very well said. And much like your example, I gotta say I fall in the camp of I didn't use that service as much as possible just because I'm at work and
Time.
it was hard to coordinate. Although in hindsight, if I would have had to redo it, I think I would have taken the time or looked at the recordings, which is something that they offer. I did
Mm-hmm.
use it a few times. I gotta say in the full year, maybe 5 times. That's not a lot, but funny enough, I went into those meetings when I really was stuck. I remember this one articulate storyline trigger that I just couldn't get working. And after a few minutes in, I was with two pros and they were troubleshooting on their end, and they just had the solution. It was so cool to see their breadth of
Mm-hmm.
experience because they're correcting people all the time and they know these things, and we're coming in with these grand ideas of I want to do this crazy thing, and
Yeah.
it didn't seem that anything was too crazy for them.
No.
I was really impressed, and we didn't touch on this. We touched on the fact that they are there, they're good, they're at what they do, but I gotta say I never felt at any moment that I was bothering anybody. They
No.
really, you would reach out to them through written communication.
Mm-hmm.
They would either provide you a video recording of some feedback or answering your question,
Yep.
or bring you into a meeting and just always make time. When they were really, really busy, it would take maybe a couple of days, but you would
Yeah.
get your answer. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
it's I thought at first it was maybe, their personalities, their teachers and all that, but chatting with them and getting to know them better, they train themselves on that. They really want to put that quality in there, and it really showed. I was impressed. One thing that I want to jump in,
Yes.
Amira, with you. You and I have talked outside of this a lot about, but I really want to put this on stage, pun intended, I guess, is to talk about your amazing theater background. So I'm putting you on the spot. I want you to talk a little bit about where you come from, your experience, how long you've done that teaching theater, and how it translates, because that really really impressed me.
Thank you. Okay, well, it seems like such a weird transition to make is like to go from theater to instructional design. But as the boot camp has shown me, there are actually so many things that connect so well in it. So I have a background in performance, directing, design, and I teach college theater currently and in the past. I'm in the process of transitioning right now. And I decided instructional design was the way I wanted to go. I was ready for a bit of a break. As anyone in the performing arts knows, it can be a little bit life consuming. It takes up a lot of time. So just ready to find a different way to share information with others. And as I got into the boot camp, some of the tasks they were asking us for, things like storyboarding, things like scripting, I'm like, I know how to do all of this already. Not in this exact field, but it was taking skills I already had and spinning them in a new way. And several people I've talked to from the boot camp from a variety of backgrounds have said that the boot camp has been really great at doing that. But I know when I hit the first storyboard and action mapping, I'm like, oh, this is just breaking down objectives and tactics like you would do with a character. I'm like, perfect. This is what I want. This is how I'm going to get it. Ta-da! And I had so many like teammates. And if you don't know, in the boot camp, you can join teams as well as having your boot camp pros or joining meetings, which is like a little cohort. You were part of a team, right, Daniel?
That's right. I was the lead of my team.
Ooh, congratulations. I was the step-in lead of my team, the unofficial lead of my team for a little bit. But no, so I would talk to people and they'd be so confused. And I was so grateful for my theater background because it gave me skills in storytelling. It gave me skills in breaking down actions, objectives, and how you're going to get to that goal. And it gave me really great people and communication skills that gave me that idea of how to get information to different audiences. So I really felt like was lucky enough to have a background that helped me transition that into instructional design.
That's so cool. I've heard the story before, but just hearing it again, it hits different. The reason why it hits different is when I got to the storyboard stage, that
Mm-hmm.
was extremely foreign to me. It was very, very difficult, not in a bad way, but it challenged me. I figured, all right, a few weeks and I'll be done. I'll have the stuff written down. I'll have ideas of visuals and triggers and activities and things like that. However, it took 2 months for me, again, with that 1 hour a day.
Yep.
So it was a longer investment than I anticipated. However, I had two coaches give me feedback, and I grew so much from that experience that now in my personal work, I'm doing some storyboards. I leverage AI as well to help me out because it's not my strength, but just to give me that edge. But now I understand the reason behind it. There's another project that I want to put on my portfolio, and
Mm,
instead of my previous self would have been, all right, let's just open up storyline, put in the visuals, and go ahead and do it. Instead of doing that, I'm stepping back a bit. I'm taking my time, and
good.
I'm doing a storyboard. I'm putting some images, I'm putting some ideas, and when I read and review, despite it taking more time, it generates much better ideas. It generates a better perspective of where I want to go. And one of the best cues that I've had related to the storyboarding is what is the story? And at first I was, what do you mean? I want to teach this, go there. But
It's so important.
we learn in the boot camp and also in a lot of instructional design resources or even like neuromarketing resources, a lot of psychological resources. Story is one of the best ways where we remember. So
Hmm.
in the boot camp, we leverage that, and in our field, we should leverage that as much as possible. And to that point, Amira, since you're coming into the team an advantage, I would love to hear your perspective on storytelling. uh, what exact when you're creating training, what's your process? Are you already jumping into how am I going to produce this as a story? Does that come in later? Do you struggle with it, or is it that the story is the first thing that pops into your head?
So I do start with action mapping or some basic form of action mapping. I do love that the boot camp hits that. I do mine slightly. Again, I do objective tactics. I want to make sure I know what outcome I want, and what actions I'm going to be representing in it. So before I hit story, I do make sure that I know that, because this is one thing that I did get feedback on from the pros. I can get a little wordy and I can get a little too into the story. So for me, I had the opposite problem of you. I wanted and needed to make sure I had my goals very clearly set before I go into the story, because it's easy to go off into the weeds as you develop that. So once I have my actions set, then for me it does come kind of naturally to set it up into a story format. And something that I helped several of my team members with is envisioning this, because while it comes really naturally to some people, it's really tricky for others. And that kind of blew my mind. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't just think in story? So there was a teammate who was creating a learning experience, if I may use an example. about like a day in school, and they wanted 3 different experiences for this learner to have. They're like, okay, so this is going to happen, and then I need to have a moment where she's talking to this. I'm like, okay, pause, pause, pause. What's the context? And that's one of the first things. It's like, okay. And they're like, well, it needs to happen a year apart. I'm like, why does it need to happen a year apart? One thing that has been key for me in theater and in instructional design, we don't make movies, we don't make plays, and you shouldn't make learning about the ordinary and mundane. You want the extraordinary moments. Even if it's training, it's going to show you the everyday moments, but it's going to be in a context that may be slightly exaggerated. Odds are most of the things you're being trained about, you're hoping aren't going to happen, right? So like if you're working on OSHA violations, you're hoping none of that happens. It's an extraordinary day if some of those big things happen. But if you're doing an immersive learning situation, you need to imagine a scenario in which all of these things might happen. So that's one of the big things I go into. But with them, I'm like, no, what if we could integrate all of these into one day? Imagine the individual, your learner, is having a day, okay? You just told me the 3 things that you need to hit or the 3 scenarios you want to talk about. What is a day where all 3 of those things might happen? And the first thing she said is, ooh, that's a bad day. I'm like, it is. But our goal is to get the learner through that bad day. That's something real for most people. Ooh, that's a bad day. And in a learning scenario, sometimes that's what you're trying to work through is all of those bad things in one day. And if you succeed, it gives you an even bigger sense of relief. Look at all the stuff I did in that one day. So that's kind of how I approach that storytelling is, can we fit it into a scenario that kind of makes sense, either a one day or a little piece of time that you're tracking through there. That got very rambly and I'm not sure if it made sense, but
Well, it makes
hopefully
sense
it
to
did.
me. It made sense to me. Making it
Mhm.
make it extraordinary. It's I think it's a powerful point because it is true. A lot of times when we're dealing with training, we're trying to figure out this check in the box must happen. But
Yeah.
what you're coming in with, and and we're what our field should be doing is really taking those extraordinary moments and make them keep people prepared for that. So your OSHA example is a great example. I've dealt with something similar in work as well,
Mhm.
where it was health and safety training. So I call them the check in the box type of training, meaning that it's compliance, it's health related, or it's guided through governmental agencies, meaning that we have to do it. We have to show that people have done it. We have to have data on it.
Compliance training.
Compliance training, right? And what I like to challenge myself and the people I work with is how can we make this memorable? So instead of just asking the questions or giving your a quiz, let's say, would you do this? Would you do that? Or what are the 5 best elements for this scenario in terms of safety, whatever that might be. It's not something that we can remember long term. You do the check in the box and then you move on and think about it.
Yeah.
In the business world, when people do these things on their day one or week one,
Hmm.
you don't recall them. You don't remember it. So let's say that there is a fire drill. Let's say that there is something that does happen that what you've done should help you in that situation. You don't remember it. And that's where your point hits hard on me because you put them in that scenario. You put them in that really, really bad day where, okay, these things are happening. And now you have emotions. So you have neurochemistry happening in your brain, which solidify memory retention.
Yep.
And that took me such a long time to understand, going back to our story
Hmm.
conversation, that took me such a long time to understand how important stories are. But I really, really see it that way now, thanks to the bootcamp and other resources. And hearing you say that, it's such a powerful point.
Well, the boot camp, the other thing I loved that it hit so hard in this, and it plays right into story, is having memorable consequences for your
Mm,
scenarios. And that's playing into the bad day. Is again, ideally, and you've seen my project, it's a camping scenario project. If you do everything wrong in my project, it is a very bad day. Again, you get lost in the middle of the night and have to stay out all night. You get buried in a landslide and a bear breaks into your tent. Ideally, none of that would happen to you and you'd have a relatively normal camping trip and it's still a story. But having those memorable consequences, and I know the bootcamp pros really went over that so very much. And that's something that plays into the theater background too, is stakes. How much is at risk? You always want to go for the highest stakes consequence because it elicits the most emotion, just like you were saying. I know when I was developing mine, I was going for the highest stakes and I was going to have the bear kill my learner. And they told me since I had a mixed audience, I wasn't allowed to have the bear kill the learner. I'm like, you guys were telling us go for the highest stakes. So now you just get swiped at. But it was important to keep my audience in mind for that one. But I was going high stakes. I'm like, you're dead. The bear mauled you. It's like, no, maybe less, Amira, maybe less.
I love that. I'm laughing because A, it's really funny, but also I had this exact same uh, back and forth with my coach, because so for those that don't know, my flagship project was dealing with building a military unit to go on deployment. So you have to make sure that you're selecting the right dose and the right type of exercise to build up their physique, so that once they get to on deployment, they're fully ready, they're operationally ready. They go on deployment, they come back safe and sound. And my first reason with my background was, okay, some of them just don't make it because they weren't fit enough. And I was trying to deal with it because it is a real scenario. It can
Yes.
mostly really happen where if
Mhm.
military members are not properly prepared for deployment, bad things can happen, or bad things can happen to people in their unit. So it's not something that's outside of the ordinary. But a better way that I really appreciate was they get injured during training and they can't go on deployment, which is also a realistic consequence that happened. And I love that you bring that consequence part up, because that also part of that story challenge for me was to dig. I was digging in my brain and trying to think future oriented of what consequences would be, because I'm coming in just saying, hey, I want them to select these exercises or this intensity of exercise
Mhm.
selection, et cetera, et cetera. And I was trying to figure out, well, what is the short term consequence, which, oh, okay, they
Mhm.
might get an injury or this and that, or they might not follow. But I really wanted to bring the long term injury, because in a physical exercise field where I come from, it's more of a long term consequence that happens.
Yeah.
Therefore, I had to think of my story not as just a fitness session in itself, but no, a sequence of fitness sessions. So you have maybe a program where you start with your soldiers on day one, and then months in advance, closing in on the deployment day. That's when you're finishing off. And that really, really took me by surprise. It got me out of my comfort zone, but I loved it. I loved, and now I just can't get myself to think otherwise than of
Right.
these story driven scenarios, these long term consequences. And to
I
go
love
back
scenario
to the
based
health and
learning.
safety,
Yeah.
it's the same thing, right? You want to put someone into a health and safety situation where it's not just tell me what the processes are, step one, or put these in the right order. There's
You get the chance to experience
Yeah,
experience it in a low stakes environment where you get to experience the consequences without actually causing, a meltdown or something. And Daniel, you just said something that was wonderful that I'd love to touch on for a second. Is I was talking about having people, put it into one bad day. Your project is such a wonderful example of looking at the long term. Some projects really do need that. For a relatively simple basic skills, it's easy to make it one bad day. Your project not only looks at those short-term consequences, but does such a great job looking at consequences over a period of time, which I know for some training gets overlooked or is just kind of pushed to the side. Can you tell me a little bit about your process on that? I know we talked about it a little bit last time, but you said there were steps that you took, and I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, it was a passion project for me, and I really had a lot of fun. I came in. So for those that don't know, I used to work with the Canadian Armed Forces as a civilian, and I trained the military. So it was all my job was all about fitness training, and I would train military members and civilians to ensure that the quality of service in physical education to the military was top notch, so that people
Nice.
were ready to go and deploy. And the number one factor in the Canadian Armed Forces, and I'm sure in the US and most forces, the number one reason where people got injured was through PT, physical exercise. It's such an ironic thing that the service that you provide to mitigate that thing is the one that's causing the most of the problem. And I've had a lovely career with them where me and my team were trying to mitigate that. And for my flagship project, I wanted to bring that in, not knowing how how it would be possible, but I was able to bring something that was complex in nature into this little story thing. That's where I had so much challenges, but I made it through. And I throw people, I give them a unit. So you as the learner, you're this person. You don't see yourself, so you see the screen with these hand-drawn characters that I've made myself. So I made five little characters that you see on screen that you follow through the different seasons, because as you mentioned, it's long term.
Mhm.
And you have your warrant officer, so the essentially the one leading your small unit. He comes in, he's saying that, hey, we have a problem, people are getting injured, which is totally a realistic situation. And then you're thrown these three questions of this is these choices of exercise or the choice of intensity or whatever it may be related to that. You pick and choose. You have a mentor that comes and answers the question, and then based off of how you choose, you have one really bad choice, one choice that's not the greatest, but hey, it makes it up. I call it the common way that people would do it
Yes.
through my experience. Nothing bad when I would see it, but I would correct it live when I used to host these live sessions. And the right answer. And
Mhm.
based off of those consequences, the best way is to get all three right. And then, as I've mentioned, the whole unit goes on deployment, comes back, they're ready for action, they're fit and all of that. And if you don't get that, you either have people that are injured, can't go on deployment. So instead of having five, you have four, three, two that go, and they come back. They're really tired. They've done the work of five people, but being one or two less, and or they all go together, but they weren't as prepared. So those it was very branching with
Mhm.
articulate storyline. So that's another reason why I took my time to do it. But I really love how it came out, and it was so cool to put everything that I've learned together. So articulate storyline was completely novel to me when I first jumped
Me
into the
too.
boot camp, and to take something that I would deliver in a classroom and on the gym setting and to put it in a virtual was quite the challenge, but I absolutely loved it. And
Mhm.
just to wrap things up here, Amira, when I'm given other types of challenges that in my field of work, I really have that mindset now where how can I make this a story? Like, what are the
Yes.
consequences?
Mhm.
What are the baseline assessments, and what are the things that we want to measure?
Yeah.
And a lot of times I see people not necessarily familiar with that approach, but I could see light bulb moments where people are thinking, this is not a bad way of doing things, of taking a little bit more time, but making sure that we're hitting it. I'd love to hear more about on your end, Amira.
Mhm.
Um, we talked about your project, we talked about storytelling, we talked about your background in theater, do you have any projects that you're currently working on or any ideas that pop up since you've done the boot camp?
Ugh, I always have projects that pop up. It's a matter of like pruning them back. It's like, no, we don't need to have like a brand new thing. I've done a couple of projects recently. I've been working a lot on interview skills and things lately as well that the boot camp does also hit. But a project I just put together recently for fun was a little. I wanted to try my hand at a mobile app because
Cool.
that was something that the boot camp kind of hit later. They give you on top of just this big wonderful project that we got to build. I love all of the little extra resources they throw out there. It's like, oh, you could do something like this. So I know Scott came out with that really fun mobile app. I'm like, what could I do with that? And I, for once, had a problem coming up with ideas. I'm like, no, I need something that's going to actually be, some things people want to take. And my first idea ended up being the one I went with. And I don't know if you saw the project when I posted it. It's a little recipe generator. So it's like from when you don't know what to cook, what should you put together? And the people answer three little questions, and it goes through and it gives you a list of meals or recipes that you can plan at the end of it. I'm like, this is a really cool marketing tool. This is a really cool, just like everyday people tool. But it was interesting for that project to have to step back from storytelling because it wasn't scenario based e learning. It's like, okay, how do you make a project that really is essentially a quiz with no right answers, engaging? So then I had to really fall back on my visuals for that one, and we went through several iterations, but I feel like it was still really engaging. But while scenario based e learning is really great for engaging your brain when you need a behavior change like that, sometimes you do just need to get people to the information they want. So that project for me was a really great test of that. It's like, okay, people want a specific amount of information, they're going to want it quickly. What questions do I need to ask that are going to get them the correct information? So that was the big challenging part for me, is what are the right questions for me to ask to give them that.
So cool. I gotta admit, I haven't seen that project, but I will check it out. You know what I've thought as the conversation was going? I'll
Hmm,
I'll try to post our or link our portfolios to this conversation
thinking
because
that.
because we're talking about so many things and maybe
Exactly.
this is gonna bring up some curiosity. So if anybody
Mhm.
wants to see your work, my work, and things like that, they can definitely follow through. That see, that's another thing that I didn't expect once I finished the boot camp because it's so weird. I finished it, but I still feel like I'm in it, and
All the time.
not in a bad way.
No.
So what I mean by that is right now I'm working on another project. I think I've mentioned
Hmm.
that, and the storyboarding, the visual assets. I've got an idea. Devlin has pushed a lot of AI
Yes.
related projects, so I'm getting my feet wet into that. I've taken some courses on JavaScript, and I say that as if it means that I know what JavaScript is. I'm still completely lost about it. I know what the screen looks like and the
Mhm.
font, but that's a well, I guess I'm not giving myself any credit here. I guess if I would look at it, I would now understand that it's JavaScript. I would now understand certain things, but the idea is to integrate AI into a project later. So, things to look forward. But it's so cool because I thought that once you have a portfolio, off you go, you got this amazing career going, and you can kind of rest. And although that's not the reality, I'm not sad about that because
No.
I now have a platform that I can feed more
Yes.
projects into, not just
Yes.
projects, but other things. So, for example, I can link this little interview into there as well. I
Mhm.
can link other things, other YouTube videos that I was a part of there.
Mhm.
So I didn't know the first thing on building a website, but now that I know how to do that, I have the choice. Either I let it be and hope for the best and see what that does, or I keep feeding it and build that. And especially with what we've learned with LinkedIn on how to communicate on LinkedIn, how to post. Now it's it's like this massive beast that you can feed, and everything is interconnected. You build this network, you build this communication profile, and you get to meet interesting people, you get to share things, and maybe it might take you longer to get that dream job, but you're still advancing in life. And that's what I
The
didn't know.
learning is invaluable.
Yes,
Hmm.
it's the learning, it's the connections,
Yep.
it's the experience. It's really, really cool. I'd like to know a little bit about your experience on LinkedIn. Going in, were you already familiar with the platform? Because I was completely like ignorant of how it works.
Yep.
Now I know better. But
Hmm.
how did you approach it before, and how are you using it now?
Definitely. I'd love to touch on that. I'd also love to take a quick stab at something you just said a moment ago about the boot camp that was just wonderful. One of the biggest takeaways for me from the boot camp that I've loved is it's fostering this curiosity that keeps pushing me, and they keep releasing new materials. You were talking about Devlin's AI. Once I finished my project, and again, you think you have the portfolio and you finished, you're going to put it on LinkedIn and call it a day. Not at all. The second I finished, AI and JavaScript started becoming huge. And I'm like, oh, okay, new learning we need to jump into. And it fosters, again, if you're going to be a teacher, you should be a lifelong learner. If you're going to be an instructional designer, you should be a lifelong learner. And the bootcamp fosters that sort of interest. And that plays right into LinkedIn, because LinkedIn also has so many great resources and people there that just keep giving me things to get excited about. I see what other people are doing and I want to learn new stuff. But to answer your question, I was a complete LinkedIn newbie. Technically, I had one that I think I made probably 8 or 10 years ago when I first started working. And I'm going to admit something quite shameful. I'm pretty sure I made it initially to connect with someone that I knew in high school that I couldn't find on any other social media. So it wasn't even for work. Sorry, just admitting these things. And then I did nothing with it. So it's literally just been sitting there with maybe two connections and no material on it. And then I started really honing it for instructional design. And oh my goodness, what a wonderful resource it is. And it was intimidating. Were you intimidated when you first started?
Absolutely.
Right?
Same as you, I've created it before. I've never used it. And just to jump in here with a funny story, I was invited on one of Devlin's Q&As
Great.
that it wasn't him that hosted it, it was Sabrina. So she hosted,
Mhm.
and then it was posted on YouTube, which is fantastic. And they wanted people that have gone through the boot camp. And at the time, I was still very much in it. So they wanted someone in the boot camp to talk about how the experience is. And we're
I
talking,
did the same thing.
yeah, I loved it. I thought it was
Me
amazing.
too. Yeah.
And funny enough, Devlin's platform is huge, so we were chatting with a lot of people. They were
Hmm.
texting or
Hmm.
whatever the term is,
Yeah.
and a lot of them said, "Oh, I'm gonna connect with you on LinkedIn," which I thought, okay, no problem. 4 or 5 months later, I go out to my LinkedIn and I see their names. I had no idea how to connect with people. It's not hard, but I didn't know how to do it. So once I went through the training, I had a better idea. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was completely new to it. I'm embarrassed to say, but anyways, now I'm much more comfortable. But
Yeah.
here's another thing to jump in because I don't
Hmm.
I don't want to cut you too much. Is that interview that I was a part of, I now placed it in my feature section on my YouTube. So if people are looking, not my YouTube, sorry, on my LinkedIn profile. So I have my portfolio website that's featured
Hmm.
and that interview as well that's featured. So if people are looking for me and they want to get me to get to know me better, well, hey, there's an hour video of me and other people talking about
Yeah.
training and development and answering a bunch of questions. So I'm figuring if anybody wants to know more about me, that's a great way to showcase that. So that's just another type of connection that we can make through the boot camp that I've never would have thought of.
Right? The featured section on LinkedIn is really good. And I've been trying to keep mine small, but that's a great idea because one of my supplementary projects was featured on one of the Devlin Peck videos that Sabrina also hosted. And I have that on my posts, but that would be a really great way to just extra feature something. So thank you for bringing that up. Now I'm gonna go look at my LinkedIn again. Oh, I will say though, while I'm feeling so much more comfortable with LinkedIn, and again, it's such a great resource, one of the things that I am still constantly working on and fighting is the algorithm. I'm like still trying to figure out when to post and what to post and like who to tag. Like I posted the other day just one of my really early storyline projects. It was maybe the first or the second lesson in Bootcamp. And it was really cute. And it was fun. It's a drag and drop, which is not horribly accessible, we know now. But when you're first learning, I was so proud of it. I'm like, it's cute. I'll post it. That has gotten almost as much response as my portfolio website, or no, not my portfolio, my featured project, and possibly a little more than my portfolio. And I think it was just the day I posted it. I'm like, really? But the super highly interactive, like all the stuff I did, meal planning project got like none. And it has to do with the day you post it and the time you post it. So now I'm sitting here trying to plot like how do I break the algorithm, break into the algorithm, and do you repost something that you did before that you want to have more attention? I have also learned though, don't edit your posts and don't delete your posts because apparently that'll put you down in the
Oh, really? All of those things are
yes.
really, really cool to know.
Yeah.
I can share a little bit of what I've learned because
Oh, please.
posting is something that I'm really enjoying, and I never thought I would like it. I'm
And you're so good at it. Like
well,
you stay on the ball
I,
with it and you have such interesting content.
I appreciate it, but I will admit that I leverage AI a lot on it.
Ah,
So I'll talk a little bit about my process. The first thing is I've taken the habit many years ago of just writing topics that I would love to chat about or to work on, and the
yeah.
idea was fundamentally to put it on maybe a YouTube video or something like that. But when I was going through the boot camp and I arrived to the LinkedIn area, I took all of those topics that were on my phone in just a list and I extrapolated on it a little bit more. So I would write a little bit more exactly what the topic would be, not going into depth or detail, but what this topic would be, almost kind of like a a small article, if you will, just a couple of paragraphs. Then I would put it in, I use ChatGPT, so I would put it in ChatGPT and ask it to make an interesting post for LinkedIn. So what I saw and what I was very excited about is ChatGPT was able to make it condense because
Nice.
it is limited what you could put on a post, and it would add all of these funny emojis and things like that that I don't I wouldn't bother to do, but things that
Hmm.
would attract the attention and especially the phrasing of it, that marketing way of grabbing people's attention, which is again not a strong suit of mine, but it was able to do what I struggled with. Although the content does come from my ideas and all that, it's as if I'm working with this editor that's taking my ideas and saying, okay, let's make it pop out a little bit
Cool as
more. Exactly. And going back to when posting, that was also something that I struggled with. I would do it on the weekends because that was my time that I would write it, edit
hmm
it, do the whole thing, and then post it.
Yeah.
After talking with a few boot campers, I've learned a few tricks. Again, I went back to ChatGPT and simply asked, when's the best time to post? And the window, now it might have changed, and if anybody's wondering, I would say do your research. Don't take my word for
Always.
it, but the response that I got was on between Tuesdays and Thursdays of the week, which
Hmm.
is when most people are at work and looking at LinkedIn,
Yep.
and around 10 a.m. to maybe 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. Anyways, I pro I program my posts, so I still do them on the weekends because that's my time. But I discovered that you have a button that you can
Release it later.
release it, schedule it. Exactly, thank
Oh,
you.
that's smart.
So now I always schedule it for. the Tuesday or Wednesday at about 10 a.m. and I don't even need to think about it or stress and all of that. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a good little function, little strategy, if you will, that
Genius.
yeah, that can work. And
Yeah.
it is funny because the posts that we think are the most exciting about what we do
Hmm.
oftentimes don't generate that much, and sometimes I'll pick some
Right.
stuff where I'm like, okay, this is just to have something for this week, something that I did or a thought that I have, and all of a sudden there's all these comments that I get to interact with, which is great, but
Yes.
you just never know what people are going to get engaged with. It's so
So funny.
interesting.
Well, and I love that you said Tuesdays and Wednesdays because the post that got all the interaction was on a Wednesday at like 11. And my previous habit had been Fridays were my post days, and I
Yeah.
tended to do it in the evening. And I thought about it. I'm like, that's when people are tuning out and starting their weekend brain. So it makes sense. It doesn't get as much engagement. And again, the little drag and drop, I'm getting comments like, what a great learning experience and this and that. I'm like, no, 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 look at my other skills. My skills are over there. This was for funsies. Which
That's
all the
awesome.
comments, I'm like, no, really, please look elsewhere. I have better posts.
That's awesome, Maria.
Learning the timing and knowing that you can schedule them is, again, as you learn LinkedIn, that's such a great tool to be able to utilize. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. This is what I
Yeah,
love about these conversations, right? We're all kind of in this together. There's all these
exactly.
little tricks that we can learn, and the boot camp really opened it up for me. And this continuation with the networking in LinkedIn is just amplifies it
Oh, yes.
tenfold or much more. I think this is a good place to end it, Amira. First of all, I
Mhm.
want to thank you for taking the time to do this. This is fantastic. First time doing it, and you're absolutely wonderful. It's great to hear your experience, your
Thank you.
solving, your background in theater still impresses me. I love the way that you see everything in the lens of a story and how beneficial that is. And I'd love to know, do you have anything that you want to say or share to wrap things up in terms of whether either projects that or skills that you want to build, or maybe some encouraging thoughts for people that are not in the ID business, but they're thinking maybe of becoming an instructional
Mhm.
design, maybe someone kind of like you that comes from teaching either theater or college or high school, whatever that might be.
Sure, sure, sure. Um, so first of all, I'm 100% with you on skills that I'm looking to learn right now, which is the AI and the JavaScript. So maybe one day we'll have a chat about those and compare some project features.
That'll be fun.
Exactly. But for anyone who's looking to get into it, I mean, first of all, I say trust your instincts. Odds are you have more transferable skills than you think you have. Everybody thinks that jumping between fields is going to be scary, and it is. But most things worth doing are scary. Trust the skills that you have and be adaptable. Roll with things and open your brain to all of those wonderful learning opportunities that are out there through whether it's a boot camp, whether it's through LinkedIn and networking. There are a million people out there who will help you, and you know more than you think you know.
That's very well said. I appreciate that. Thank you very
Thanks.
much, Amira. Thanks
Of course.
everyone for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.